On January 3rd, the US government witnessed something they had never experienced before. Missouri carried out the execution of Amber McLaughlin, marking the first time a transgender woman was executed in the country. She was convicted of murder back in 2003. But the big question is, was she a cold-blooded killer, or did a messed-up system chew up an unfortunate woman with some serious mental health struggles? We're going to dive into the facts, peel back the layers, and uncover the truth so that you can decide for yourself. Stay tuned because it's about to get real. How it begins. The story starts in November 2002. Scott and Beverly Gunther hit it off, and soon they were living together in Beverly's place in Moscow Mills, Missouri. Things between Scott and Beverly started to go downhill pretty fast. They'd fight a lot, break up, then make up, over and over. By the summer of 2003, Beverly had enough and called it quits for good. But Scott wasn't ready to let go. He kept calling Beverly at her work in Earth City, Missouri, and would even pop in to see her. Beverly wasn't having it and told him to back off, but he didn't. It got so bad that Beverly had to get a restraining order, and sometimes cops would even walk her to her car after work. How did it happen? On November 20th, 2003, a Thursday, Beverly Gunther's neighbor made a worried call to the police. Beverly hadn't come home from work, and given the months of harassment and stalking by her ex, everyone was on edge. The police found her car still at her workplace, but Beverly was nowhere to be seen. At the site, the cops found a lot of blood, which was a huge red flag, signaling that they might be dealing with a murder case. While police were searching her body, McLaughlin was cleaning his vehicle with bleach. Want to know what happened next? Subscribe to our channel and keep continuing the story. Given the history of Beverly's ex ambushing her after work, he quickly became their prime suspect. The next day, they got a tip that Scott McLaughlin was at a local hospital seeking mental health treatment. They arrested him there. Then, on November 22nd, a Saturday, Scott led the police to where Beverly's body was. She was 45 when she died. Scott, who was 29 at the time, confessed everything. He said he had been hiding outside her workplace, furious because he felt Beverly was messing with his head. He jumped out at her, causing her to drop her keys. He admitted to pulling a knife on her, forcing her to the ground, and it's believed he raped her at knife point. After that, he stabbed her multiple times, including in the neck, then put her body in his station wagon and took off. McLaughlin headed to an area near Beverly Park in South St. Louis, intending to dispose of Beverly's body in the Mississippi River. However, he couldn't manage to drag the body all the way down the slope, and it got caught in some bushes. Later, the police discovered trails of blood, McLaughlin's flashlight, and the weapon used in the murder at the scene. The autopsy revealed that Beverly had died from losing a lot of blood due to multiple stab wounds. While the medical examiner confirmed that Beverly had been raped, it was unclear whether it occurred before or after her death. The official cause of death was determined to be a homicide, leading to McLaughlin being charged. The trial. Amber's trial was a pretty intense court case. During the sentencing phase of the trial, the prosecution brought up some serious points against Scott. They pointed out that Scott had a criminal record, was on the sex offender registry, had been stalking and harassing Beverly, and committed murder during a forcible rape. On the other side, the defense tried to balance this out. They brought in psychologists and other witnesses who talked about Scott's mental health issues. They mentioned borderline personality disorder, severe depression, a history of ADHD, and brain damage. They also mentioned Scott's foster father, Mr. McLaughlin, a police officer from St. Louis. He was accused of harshly disciplining his children, using paddles, his nightstick, and even a taser at times. And according to Scott, the food was frequently kept locked away, preventing the children from accessing it. In school, Scott struggled academically and exhibited unusual behaviors. When he was 9, school authorities decided to conduct tests to figure out what was behind these issues. The results showed that Scott had a below-average IQ around the 80s, along with hyperactivity, attention deficit disorder, and learning disabilities. Despite all this, the jury ended up being stuck and couldn't agree on what McLaughlin's punishment should be. The jury was kind of on the fence. They didn't buy most of the heavy stuff the prosecutors from St. Louis County were throwing at them. They only agreed with 1 out of 4 big points the prosecution made. Now, usually, you'd need the whole jury to agree if you're going to sentence someone to death. But in Missouri, it's different. When the jury couldn't make up their minds unanimously, the judge stepped in and decided to go with the death penalty. This was a big deal because the judge used some of the reasons to sentence her to death that the jury didn't even agree with. There's more to Amber's story, though. Her lawyers filed for clemency in 2022 and brought up a lot of tough stuff from her past. We're talking about serious childhood trauma, mental health issues, and a lot of personal struggles. She even attempted suicide several times, both as a child and an adult. The thing is, during her trial, her lawyer was supposed to bring in an expert to talk about all this, but that never happened. In 2016, a court actually said it was a big mistake not to have that mental health evidence in her trial and overturned her death sentence. But then another court came along and said, nope, we're sticking with the death sentence, and the Supreme Court didn't want to get involved. Beyond the bars, Scott started transforming his gender and became Amber McLaughlin. Jessica Hicklin, an inmate who knew Amber McLaughlin before her transition, recalled McLaughlin as quite shy. However, when McLaughlin started her transition in 2020, she sought Hicklin's advice on mental health support and navigating life in a predominantly male, maximum security prison. Hicklin helped McLaughlin with the necessary paperwork and bureaucracy, teaching her how to file the right documents and who to talk to. This collaboration blossomed into a friendship. They would meet weekly for what Hicklin called girl talk, where McLaughlin often lightened the mood with her dad jokes. This network of friendship and support became especially meaningful in light of McLaughlin's execution. Since the death sentence was reintroduced by the US Supreme Court in 1976, this was the first instance in which a woman had been subjected to it in the state. The decision's detractors claimed that McLaughlin's execution would not solve the larger structural problems ailing society, including violence against LGBTQ+ people, hate crimes, and the cycle of violence that disproportionately impacts women. The execution. People were really split over Amber's execution. Some people thought it was just the right punishment for the terrible crime she committed, and they didn't think her being transgender should make a difference. But then, there were others who felt that her rough childhood and mental health issues played a big part in what happened, and they saw executing her as just plain wrong. This whole situation sparked a lot of protests and got people talking about how mental health intersects with the justice system. It also brought up a lot of questions about whether the death penalty is fair, especially for transgender people who already have it tough. In the end, despite all the appeals and calls for clemency, Amber was executed on January 3, 2023. It was a really significant moment, not just because it was so sad, but also because it really shone a light on some complicated issues like the death penalty, mental health, and the rights of transgender people. That's the end of our story. So, what do you think? Was executing her the right call, or does it show problems in our justice system? Should her mental health issues have been given more weight? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and hey, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to our channel.